Hey, bubbling, coming in, crushing this. Alright, so I wanted to do a quick video explaining why I code the elements to the numbers I do. So first off, we should just recognize purity, right? Fire and water are the pure elements, in that fire is yang yang, water is yin yin. These are the pure. What else are they? They're spiritual, right? And now when we start thinking about water or, okay, well, let's just start thinking about them in order, right? First, we have, like, water deals with the past, right? And one deals with the future, or fire, right? Like, I'm already saying one. So what this indicates is that the first thing we have is the Fool, right? Before we have any sort of direction, before we have any sort of past, right? Any sort of circumstance or any type of water or emotional connection, right? So this is, I feel like this is pretty obvious, right? Like, one usually correlates to something like Aries. Like, people already understand this, right? Like, one would be correlated to fire, right? And then once you have enough Fool experiences, once you have enough fire, once you have enough passionate, like I said, Fool experiences, just going, eventually you develop a pattern, and this would relate into something that could be realized, right? Something that could be a vibe, something like water, right? So immediately we start to see that 1 and 2, if we're just looking at 1 and 2 right now, like 1 would be on the more so potential, right? And 2 would more so be on the realized, right? Because 1 is always changing, always trying to find new things, always trying to go its own way, or a new way, right? Correlated to finding like individuality, finding a new path, right? So whereas once we get to 2, this is where we start realizing, this is where there is a vibe and there is like a circumstance or a body in which we can art out of, right? So that is just like step 1 is understanding 1 and 2, odd and even, right? So straight up, odd will represent more of a spiritual element, more of a spiritualization, individualization, where 2 represents more of a corporeal element, right? But even though if we're just dealing with 1 and 2, 1 would be fire and 2 would be water, right? Because it's the initial division, right? So even though water or 2 would represent more of the physical or the corporeal, and 1 would be more so the spiritual or the individuating, then this still 1 and 2 are still these pure elements. So they both are still the pure sect, right? So now if we understand the realm of 4 or the realm of 2 by 2, right? We have 1 and 2 being the spiritual, right? Because they're the first, right? In the 1, 2, and then 3, 4, right? They're the first. Here, let me create a thing. All right, so if I break it up this way in these boxes, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like, because there are 4 elements, we always break things up fractally, aka now we're gonna have a 2 by 2 system. So fire and water both actually correlate to 1, and air and earth actually correlate to 2. Okay, we have the spiritual and we have the corporeal. We have the ones that don't quite have a structure, and then we have the ones that are structured and are andromatic. So initially, like I was saying, the first thing we have is the fire or the Fool or the potential. The next thing we have is the water. But both of these are both spiritual elements, right? Fire and water, when we think about the elements, both are vibes. They're both spiritual. They both can be expressed through multiple different physical incarnations, right? They're fluid like that, right? Whereas then once we get to the air and the earth, these are more logic and practicality, right? These are more clear cut, right? And these are also mixtures. So now understanding why what would be next, right? So once we have fire, right, and we have enough of a Fool state that starts to create a vibe and an overarching direction, aka a water, now that water or that circumstance or that vibe, we can incarnate through a perspective. So now we'd be back on 1, right? We'd be on the second level, right? So we'd be in the corporeal, but we'd be in a 1 or an active or spiritualizing state, aka ego, aka air. And so this is why reason or ego or thought or intelligence or our particular use of our spirit now incarnate through a circumstance that we're utilizing in order to art, right? This would be 3. This would be air, right? So now, but now, once that solidifies and we have 2, 2, once we have on the corporeal plane, the corporeal element, right? This will be earth. Once that air or that individuality is in a current for long enough, and it actually is a solid individuality, that will solidify, right, into something that would actually be structured. So you can actually see this in the fractal nature of the zodiac. So here I see that this actual pattern, if we're thinking about 4 and we're thinking about the numbers, if we cut up the zodiac into a cross, we actually find the same pattern. We find Aries 1, Cancer 2, Libra 3, and Capricorn 4. So another part of decanology or numerology that I've discovered, it is a fractal understanding of combining the zodiac and mathematics, because this is 4, right? And we understand 4 is going to be broken up by 2 and 2. And if we understand what 1 is, like I said, spiritual, and what 2 is, corporeal, then we can understand, oh, what is the spiritual corporeal element or the spiritual solid? Okay, well, that's water, right? What is the corporeal spiritual, right? Oh, well, that's air, because once we have a vibe or we have the corporeal sort of plane developed, but we're still spiritualizing out of that, that's thought, right? That's our ability to stir things up, right? That's like Loki, the curious cat, right? But then once we have 2 by 2, we have earth. So basically that is why the elements are correlated as such. 1 being fire, right? Initially full state. 2 being water, then we start to develop a vibe and a sort of overarching direction or pattern, right? And then that pattern can actually be realized in a specific way of utilizing it, the individuality, the sun, the reason, right? The sun, right? That's been resurfaced through a vibe, right? 3, reason, and then we have 4, earth. Once it's finally, that's reason's been solidified, and now we develop circumstances, roles, and responsibilities. Once the nature follows the reason and it starts to actually solidify into roles, responsibilities, and stuff like this. So I hope this makes sense, but this will be the system that I utilize in order to correlate mathematics along with the elements, and it's fractal. It's fractally based on the zodiac. And next I'll show you how 1, 2, and 3 correlate as well fractally on the zodiac, but this is all fractal. This is all decan based. This is all combining elements, modalities, and the zodiac in a way to completely understand mathematics in relation to numerology. So I can point to you why each of these numbers mean what they mean. I'm not just pulling it out of thin air. You know what I mean? This is written in 4. Like I said, if we understand what 1 is and we understand what 2 is, well, then we can understand, okay, we have the yang placements, fire and earth. We have the yang realm, fire and water. And then we have the yin placements, water and earth, and then we have the yin realm, right? We have earth, or air and earth, right? So this is all based on a fractal and mathematical understanding of the elements, right? And it also is in perfect relation to the zodiac. So once I did understand this, and I put more videos on this, you'll see why the zodiac is aligned the way it is, why each element is the element it is, why each modality is the modality it is. We'll be able to see a deeper understanding and look into why it's all set up the way it's set up, because it is all just a play on 1, 2, 3, 4 by 1, 2, 3, aka 12, you know? So yes, it's very interesting. I hope you can stick with me, because this is divine understandings of mathematics correlated to the zodiac, and just a real symbolic understanding that makes sense. I'm never going to be pulling anything out of thin air. It's always systematized, and then through that system we use our intuition and we use our art, right? But hey, bubbling, Citra, beach, out.